The title of this podcast is I'm Standing on a Bridge. This podcast or episode is inspired by a quote from Ram Dass. Ram Dass was uh, a spiritual guy. You could call him a personal development guy, probably long before people started talking about well-being and wellness. And he was really committed to working on himself and inspiring people to do the same thing. So the quote reads, I'm standing on a bridge watching the water flow by underneath. Every once in a while, the spray touches me, and I remember I used to live in there. When I heard this, it really made me think about what my inner state used to be. It's not living out in the world, but what's inside of me. And when I was Keith 1.0, and I have to be mindful that it's so easy to slip back into that inner state of being 1.0, where is this filled with suffering, a lot of it caused with not accepting change, being closed-minded, judging other people, situations, resisting the reality of what's showing up, being attached to things that going a certain way. And when I lived that way, I caused a lot of suffering for myself and others. So that was my inner state. And I lived in there. And when I start to work on myself, I start to experience something different. It wasn't a mess inside anymore. It was a peaceful place to be. I started to be really mindful about what I allowed into my consciousness, what I was going to focus on. So I started focusing on what was wrong in the world, according to me. And I started focusing on all the goodness and what's right in the world and how I could be a part of contributing to that goodness by working on myself and serving others. But when every once in a while, I'll be standing on this metaphoric bridge and I'll be watching the water flow underneath and I'll be touched by the spray. And again, just as Ram Dass said, I will remember that I used to live in there. And most recently, I had that event happen where I went to go meet with some friends, in which I do every other week. And it's a guy who I met like 25 years ago who was a barber, put himself through college as a barber. He's now an architecture engineer, doing very well for himself in terms of a profession, but he cut hair. And so while I can trim my own beard up, it's an opportunity to really nurture that friendship, invest in it, and stay connected. And so this morning, there was a conversation that was happening in the barbershop. I know, yeah, there are people getting their haircut at 5:30 in the morning, but that's when I was there. And the conversation, kind of got on politics. And it's a conversation that I steer clear of. I know the way that I'm going to vote. However you vote is your path. But the conversation went that way. And a lot of what I was hearing was judging other people, which I used to do. It was making people wrong for how they wanted to live their lives or their choices, vilifying another group, all those things. And I just remember like this conversation about living life with a closed heart, of not accepting others, of really hating others for how they choose to live their lives or what their beliefs are. I used to live in that water. That used to be my inner state. And as I sat there, I wasn't judging uh, those guys. Instead, I just had just an awareness that I was not triggered by what they were saying, that I had myself together, that I wasn't closing my heart to them. It was just that, I don't know, I move through life differently. I don't see enemies, I see friends, and I'm grateful for that because when I lived in that water, there was a whole lot of suffering that I caused for myself and I caused for others. And as we move, closer to the election here in the United States in 2024, I see a lot of people in that water. A lot of people in that water. And that's one way to spend the next 2 months. But there's a different way. That's one way that to set yourself up that if the candidate that you vote for doesn't get into office, that you are committing yourself to living that way without knowing it for the next 4 years. That's one way to move through the next 4 years. It's also, if your candidate gets into office, the threat of what they say they want to do may be undermined by someone else. And so you have fear or concern over that. That's one way to move through the next 4 years. But I argue that there's a different way to move through the next 2 months and the next 4 years. And that's with a loving and open heart. Work on you. How can you be the best neighbor, the best friend, the best sibling, family member, loved one, partner? Why don't we do that? And then you will contribute to a better world, regardless of what unfolds in 2 months and what shows up over the next 4 years. Why not do that? And then you minimize suffering, period, in your life, and you don't create it for others. Live with an open heart. I definitely think that's the way to go. It has been for me. And so I love the new water that I get to live in. It's beautiful. It's a lot of joy. I'm turned on by everything, rarely turned off by anything, just open. Every moment that I'm in, I am looking at that as a moment to let go of my lower self so that I experience like calm waters. I mean, refreshing, restorative waters. Don't you want to live in there? And it's not out there, it's in here, it's inside. Live there. So, read the quote one more time. I'm standing on a bridge watching the water flow by underneath. Every once in a while, the spray touches me, and I remember I used to live in there. Think about the relationships with your family, with your colleagues. When you experience relationships in those and suffering in those relationships, what were you bringing to the table? How were you showing up? That was the water that you live in. Whatever they do is what they do. You get to choose how you relate to it, how you interact with it, how you see it, how you live in it. That's inside of you. Work on this.